All right, here's one I've been holding back doing for a while. I'm probably a little bit late on it, but I've done a few of these, but I haven't done any in a while. When it was first announced, Brexit, the UK doing the Brexit, leaving the European Union, I got some kickback from a lot of people in the UK. I got some people that look at me in the UK, but I had a lot of varying opinions about the UK Brexit, and I had a lot of kickback from it. And I'll actually put the link in the description for the my original one, because I think the reason that the Brexit actually happened is much more complex than the one they're actually giving. They're talking about independence for the UK and this, that, and the other, but I do believe that Brexit is actually tied to what's going on in France. But that is a different video, and I may do that one later, especially when I actually do some videos on what's going on in France with the yellow vest protest and this, that, and the third, which is tied to the African continent. But I'll do those videos first before I actually delve into the thing about Brexit, the original Brexit vote, and why I believe they actually led the UK voters down that path and actually hid what I think is the real reason. But let me go ahead and read this one, because I think this one really gives the feeling of my opinion about Brexit and some of the arrogance of the British royalty and the British elite. Well, this is actually coming from the Financial Times, which is one like the Wall Street Journal of Great Britain, which is a very, very conservative paper. Brexit is teaching Britain its true place in the world. Politicians and voters alike have nursed delusions about the nation's global role. This is from Robert Shrimsley. In one sense, Boris Johnson is right. The Brexit process has indeed felt like a national humiliation. How many Brits have felt our innards shriveled at key moments of the negotiations? And I am not talking about the incidents of diplomatic bumbling, of unwarranted Second World War references, and Dad's army condescension. I am talking about the parts of this process that have gone as predicted. Me and you both. Perhaps we should step back from the bloviated rhetoric. Humiliation is too strong. A national humbling is more accurate. The philosophy of Brexit was that, freed of EU constraints, the UK would take its rightful place in the world. This is indeed what is happening. But alas, that plate is not as great as the great power of their imagination. The UK's place in the world is hardly terrible. But Mr. Johnson learnt during his brief but undistinguished term as Foreign Secretary, our emissaries no longer bestride summits like Castlereagh. For far too long, British politicians, journalists, and voters have enjoyed a patently distorted vision of the nation as an indispensable world player. Now that the nation is facing the painful truth that the UK is not as preeminent as it has liked to believe. For proof, look at the negotiations over the Irish border. One need not get into rights and wrongs to see that the UK has essentially been pushed around by Ireland, because the EU has thrown its weight behind the demands of its continuing member. The hard fact is that the power imbalance has meant to the UK forced to choose between the chaos of no-deal Brexit or undermining the constitutional integrity on one of its four sovereign parts, and signing up to a significant amount of rule-taking. This is what happens when a single country that is not America or China negotiates with a global trading bloc. From sequencing of the negotiations to the empty scorecard of British wins, the entire process has been a lesson in power politics. Few who saw the TV program on America's London embassy will forget the smirks as the U.S. official described the British Brexit delusions. They sort of see it as a negotiation between two equal parties. In other words, the British see them as equal to the rest of the European continent. One should not overstate this. Britain is not Latvia. It still carries heft. It is a top 10 global economy, fifth or sixth or ninth depending on the market and your choice of methodology. It remains a military power with a nuclear deterrent and a seat on the UN Security Council. It is the only European nation with access to U.S. intelligence through the Five Eyes program. Its preeminence as a financial center will not immediately be dissipated by Brexit. The UK will still get its call, but after France and Germany and just before Canada, life in the top 10 is different to life in the top 3. Much of the UK's global clout derived from its being one of the big nations of the EU. Margaret Thatcher used that very platform to create the single market, drive forward global trade, and entrench democracy in Eastern Europe. The 1970s of Britain's membership were right in arguing that the alternative to pooled sovereignty was not more influence but less. Now, Britain is about to taste life as one of the loudest of the next level of voices. In this tier, maintaining influence beyond military matters requires the painstakingly unbombastic alliance building that saw its existing political and diplomatic practitioners so derided as sellouts by our chauvinistic MPs and media. It might, for example, mean expediting entry permits for Moldovan trade representatives so they do not delay the UK's ambitions at the World Trade Organization. And how will the UK's status be reflected in its new trade deals? One only has to look at Donald Trump's treatment of Canada to see that his negotiators will offer no special favors to the UK. Mr. Trump is pro-Brexit because he wants to see a weakened EU, not to play benefactor to the UK. EU nations will be similarly cutthroat, nor will sentimental attachments affect Commonwealth nations. Too many Brits fail to grasp that the former colonies do not look back to the empire with unalloyed affection. While this has been understood by serious figures in government, too much of Britain's politics, culture, and its self-image have been driven by its colonial past and the national myths built up around the last war. It is why the Brexiteers cling so desperately to the theory that Theresa May has betrayed Brexit. The alternative is to accept that their own reckless chauvinism has reduced the UK to the role of supplicant with its former partners. Adjusting to a reduced status will require a reality check in our media and our politics, and a touch of humility. If Brexit helps the UK come to a more accurate realization of its global significance, some good may yet come out of this wretched business. Still, it seems an expensive way to learn a lesson. And that is from November 24th, and this is from the Financial Times. And it's exactly what I feel about Brexit. I thought it was a dumb idea in the first place because, in my opinion, Britain has no place to go but down with Brexit. They really don't make anything anymore. They've used up pretty much most of their natural resources. They have a very extensive, let's say, socialist state, which is going to take a hit, which is already taking a hit, much like France's is. And the reason they formed the EU in the first place is because even before World War II, in World War I, they had already been diminished as a military power because Germany was basically ripping up Europe from one side to the other. Germany has been a power ever since 1871 that Britain nor France can actually handle. They beat Britain and France twice. If it wasn't for the United States and Russia, Britain would have been a supplicant state a long time ago. Now, why they believe 100 years later that they're still relevant as a singular power kind of baffles me. And even though I understand why they decided to unmoor themselves, because France is probably going to suffer the same fate that they're suffering and probably going to unmoor themselves from the EU too, that the Union will ultimately probably break up. But further proof to that will come later. This Brexit move seems more like a move of desperation. Everything they're talking about, I knew that Germany would get pissed And behind Germany, the rest of Northern Europe would get pissed, and they were going to go for a hard Brexit. They were going to make the UK pay, and pay dearly for leaving, because it's actually going to influence everybody else. There's about 4 or 5 other states, Greece, Spain, Portugal, maybe even Italy, that might try the same thing, that the EU now has to renegotiate with, because the UK broke ranks. So they're mighty pissed, and they're mighty sour, and they want the UK out now, and they want the UK to pay its divorce payments. They're going to have to pay alimony for about a good 10 years. And it's something that I don't think the UK voters actually realize how much alimony they were going to have to pay, because they've been told they can get a good deal out of Brexit and basically get away scot-free. Even if the UK got away scot-free and didn't have to pay a thing, they were still going to struggle. But now they're going to struggle and have to pay. And it may just be them moving out of the house into a small apartment, or it could go from them moving out of the house and sleeping in their car for a while. I don't know. I don't know the UK's finances. I don't know what kind of relationships they've built. I hope that Meghan Markle's marriage will actually help them with their 50 Commonwealth partners. But we will see. We will see. There's much more to this than meets the eye, and it's going to be a messy divorce, and it's going to show all the cracks that have always been there in the EU. But with that, I'm going to jump off of here. This is BGS out, and I will see you guys on the next one.